If you've ever wondered why staying grounded under pressure feels so hard, or why certain coping patterns keep showing up no matter how much you think you've outgrown them, this episode will feel like a deep exhale. We are exploring what happens when you stop numbing and start listening, when you finally look at the subconscious beliefs driving your habits, your reactions, and the ways you try to protect yourself. This conversation is all about choosing clarity over coping, building confidence from the inside out, and stepping into a version of your life that feels intentional, empowering, and fully your own. Hey lady, welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman podcast. Do you struggle with self-doubt, setting boundaries, or feeling overwhelmed? My name is Alyssa, and I'm a highly sensitive woman who spent years trying to fit in, ignoring my own needs, and living in constant fear of disappointing others. But I finally discovered the power of embracing who I am, and now I don't feel so broken. In this podcast, you'll learn to find your voice, set boundaries, and live with bold confidence and inner peace. Grab a cozy blanket. It's time to connect with someone just like you. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman. Today, I have a guest who is a trailblazing leader, speaker, and author dedicated to empowering women to thrive in male-dominated industries. She is the first female general manager in the history of the ECHL Kalamazoo Wings, but her work extends far beyond sports and business. She is passionate about sparking conversations around living alcohol-free, challenging societal norms, and empowering individuals to make choices that align with their values. Her mission is to inspire courage, authenticity, and possibility. Welcome, Toni Will.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. It's so awesome to be here.
I'm just thrilled that you have taken the time to speak to my listeners. And I just want to start by giving you an opportunity. I know I kind of captured a little bit, just a smidge of what it is that you do, but give you an opportunity to kind of share with the listeners a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I am born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I know you and I aren't too far from each other, neighboring states. But yeah, so born and raised here in Kalamazoo, and I never left. And it's pretty interesting story about how I ended up in pro hockey, which is something I get asked about quite often. But prior to that, actually, I spent 13 years in banking in the first part of my career. Then I had this great opportunity to lead the efforts with our Chamber of Commerce here in Kalamazoo for a couple years. And I accidentally stumbled into hockey after that. I actually applied for a totally different job, having nothing to do with sports. And they recognized my talents in other places, and the Kalamazoo Wings was offered to me instead. And what I like to say is it's the best job I never knew I wanted. And I've been there 11 years now. And I didn't understand then what I do now, which is my gender plays a big role in, it's pretty polarizing in professional sports for men's professional hockey. And I didn't understand that back in 2014, 15. And so I learned a lot about myself over these 11 years. And also in the middle of that, as you noted in the intro, I quit drinking 5 years ago. So there's a lot to that. And that's just one side of my life, because the other side of my life, I started my own business almost 5 years ago. And it started as lifestyle coaching to help men and women reduce or remove substances, mainly alcohol, but I can help with other substances too. From their lives. And then it kind of grew into professional development coaching, because I've worked for 26 years in different capacities. Then that kind of led to me launching my own podcast, because I wanted to lift women up in sports initially. But then I said, oh, it's got to be bigger than that. That led to a conference called Empower Her, and which is happening again this March in Kalamazoo. And then that led to my book, which is coming out in, I finally got the date, August 11th of 2026, called Not the Norm. So that's me in a nutshell. I really, I give this a lot of thought, because I think sometimes we feel like as women, we have to pick and choose. And I decided that I'm not picking and choosing. I'm going to do all the things that fill me up, and I'm going to keep doing it until there's air in these lungs.
Oh, I love that so much. I, for many, many years, decades even, felt like I had to conform and kind of fit into a box. And I am no longer interested in fitting into a box. And I don't subscribe to if I do this thing, then I cannot do this thing over here because maybe they're opposites. And so I just love that you're working in a very male dominated industry and you're lifting women up. Like, I think that's just amazing, and everything in between. So I kind of want to start with the working in a very male dominated industry and ask you kind of what you have learned through those experiences over the last 11 years about what it takes to lead with authenticity and still maintain some boundaries and regulating your emotions, because I'm sure that any type of emotion, it does not land well in some of those conversations.
I'm laughing because you are so correct. Yeah. So here's what I've learned, and this is very specific to my personality. I was about into the job 2 or 3 years before I really noted. I was sitting in a board meeting. So I like to point out that professional sports leagues are governed by what's called a board of governors, but it's similar. People understand it better when I liken it to a board of directors, but we're called governors in sports. And so that's what it means in my title, that I'm the governor of the team. I'm not the governor of the state of Michigan. Wouldn't want that job. But I was sitting in a board meeting and I looked up and I'm like, oh my Lord, there's like very few women. I was the only female governor. Now we have alternate governors and there were some women there, very few, but I was the only female governor. And I'm like, I want to do this work. And ever since that moment, I thought, all right, how can I do that? And my personality is such as I want to speak up. I learned that a lot of women don't want to do that in this space, and for whatever reason. And I don't fault them for that. But for me, I don't just want to talk about it, but I want to do something about it. So to help me stay emotionally regulated, there's some things I do individually, but on a bigger level, I thought, well, I have this, I'm going to use air quotes because I don't think of myself this way. I have this position of power. What can I do with it? And so I created a women in sports resource group for the entire league. And I have over 130 women in it now. And so we meet monthly, and the first year I did it on my own, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, let me get some other women that want to do this with me. And so we meet monthly, and that right there, meeting monthly, we have spotlight speakers come in. We read certain books written by female authors. We hold space for one another and just support. These calls are not recorded by design, so we can help navigate and understand we're not alone in some of these challenges we face in a male dominated industry. So that right there helps me know I'm not alone. And these women are my kids' age on up. I'm usually the oldest one in these rooms right now because I'm the one kind of leading the charge, which is fine. I'm totally fine with that. On the personal side, I have been in many positions where I have been treated poorly by men, whether it's in a board meeting. I've had to been apologize to publicly in a board meeting more than once for how I was treated or spoken to. I've had fans, not fans of me, but fans of the Kalamazoo Wings who have treated me completely inappropriately and never would if I were a man. And so there have been a lot of issues over the years because of my gender in that space. So how do I stay grounded? I meditate daily. I journal my gratitude journal each night before I go to bed. I got out of social media, not my own. I'm on social media, but I do not. I'm not in the comments anymore for the K Wings. I'm not part of any of that. I trust my staff. I'm very insulated at work because of the need to keep me emotionally grounded and safe, because sometimes people are, they act stupid, just to be frank. So, and then the other thing I would finally say is I'm proud of me. I love myself. And so I really invest in myself in order to become better. Like, I get coached just because I am a coach doesn't, I get coaching, and that's just one area. I work out every morning, and I do breathing techniques because I struggle with anxiety sometimes. And so, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And so those, I know I gave a lot there, but I wanted to make sure I painted a really broad stroke picture of doing it with many and then doing it alone and what that looks like on both sides.
There were so many good nuggets in there. One that really hit home for me is when you were talking about bringing all of those women together and just the concept of no longer feeling alone or like you're the only one. And I know while in a different space, right? I'm not in a very male dominated industry, but so much of my life, I have felt like I was the only one. I was extra broken and I felt very isolated. And so just this idea of speaking publicly about a lot of things and experiences and all of the different things that you are doing to keep yourself grounded and to regulate and really setting those firm boundaries. I think it's really important that we're talking about that so that we normalize it. And everyone, but especially highly sensitive women who feel like they're kind of an outlier in a society that doesn't necessarily support or celebrate someone who is really sensitive, that they're not alone, that we're all doing these types of things. And like you, although I'm a coach, I'm also getting coaching because my brain does the same thing that my listeners' brains are doing, and I need that outside perspective. So, oh goodness. I'm just so glad that we are having this conversation. One of the things that I have felt at various times in my life because of my sensitivity and because I'm feeling like I am kind of on the outside is that I'm too sensitive to lead. And that I won't be able to regulate my emotions, or I won't be able to kind of have those boundaries that I need. Has that ever been a challenge for you, thinking that you wouldn't be able to and you had to shift into learning those skills, or is that something that always came naturally for you?
Yeah, I would tell you that it's always been pretty natural for me. I'm pretty high courage. I will tell you though that there have been times when I've been triggered in a situation, and I could be triggered. I'm trying to think of, I've got a lot of examples, but so I don't like to use the word victim, but I have been on the receiving end of sexual harassment in my career, and not in this job now, not at all, but prior. And so when I run into a situation now where I may have an employee come to me with concerns about something in that same realm, I know right away that is triggering to me, because I immediately in the affect of my body, my heart rate starts to rise. So I know through my studies that my prefrontal cortex is starting to go offline. And when that happens, because what I'm hearing is it's this self-trust. And I don't trust myself in that situation. And I really have to work hard to figure out what that talk track is in my head when I'm in the middle of that situation to stay grounded. So it's in these, I give that specific example because it's in these non-traditional moments. I don't run into this stuff often, but because it's sensitive to me and my past trauma, I got to watch it. But it's taken me years to be able to recognize it. So the other thing too is I want to touch on what you said about the talk track. You were saying, like, I don't know if I could be a good leader because I'm a highly sensitive person. I believe, and so the highly sensitive person could view this as a weakness, being a highly sensitive person. I would challenge that and say, maybe it's a strength instead of a weakness, and have a conversation around that, because I view a highly sensitive person, that is a strength, because a lot of leaders are, type A, really, the empathy kind of falls to the side, especially, and I don't want to categorize, but for male leaders. So, and sometimes even for me as a female, because I get going on the goal and I don't stop to think about the emotions behind it. The highly sensitive person is the inverse of that. And the emotion first and the facts maybe follow later, or the goals follow later. And so I see that as a great balance to what we normally see. and it allows people to think differently. And so I view it as a strength, not a weakness.
It feels so good to have someone on the outside, and I say outside like in quotes, as someone who maybe isn't living being a highly sensitive person on a day-to-day basis, but to say it is a strength and that we need it to have balance. Because I can say that, right? As a highly sensitive person, I can say, oh, it's great. But if we're not hearing it from those who maybe aren't, it doesn't quite land the same. So thank you for just putting that out there for the listener to say what you bring to the table really does have a lot of value, and it's needed to balance out the other skill set, because there's nothing wrong with those other skills. They're great too. And that's the thing, is they're both great.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I want to shift gears for just a moment and kind of talk about, right now you have very healthy coping skills and you know how to regulate your system and you know what works for you, but there was a time when you didn't necessarily use all of the healthiest coping skills that you could. And so I would like for you to share a little bit about what that looked like when you were turning to alcohol, and how living alcohol-free now has kind of impacted your clarity and your energy and your success.
Oh yeah, you were kind in that question, because it was I was a mess, man. Yeah, Toni Party Time, she was something. And I say that because I don't miss her at all, but I learned a lot from her. So where I was coping in a way, I didn't really understand back then what the heck I was doing, because our culture reveres work hard, play hard, and I mean, anyone that, especially, and I'm going to say culture, but the American culture, because there are different cultures around the world that aren't necessarily like that, but the American culture is, and big alcohol, there's a lot of marketing around, if you want to be, popular, you're going to be sexier, you're going to be the life of the party. I mean, I fell for all that. And so, like a lot of people do. And what happened to me is I became addicted to an addictive substance. And I had to learn that it wasn't me that was the issue. It's the substance. But I had all these beliefs that were rooted deeply in my subconscious around alcohol and what it was providing me, the perceived benefit. And so anytime I was celebrating, I was drinking. I was having a bad day, I had a drink. And I want to pause on this point, because yes, I had an issue with alcohol. I call myself addicted to it, but I coach a lot of people too who just don't want to drink a toxic substance. You don't have to be addicted in order to stop doing it. And so when I quit drinking for the millionth time in October of 2020, I chose a different methodology. I wanted to think differently. And so I initially stopped. I mean, I stopped and started a lot over the years, but in 2016, I quit for 15 months with the help of AA, and I did an IOP, which is an intensive outpatient program, which helped me stay sober for 15 months. But the problem with those methodologies, and I don't have an issue with it, but for me, it stops at the behavior. It doesn't go into the mindset, the thought work, the subconscious work. And so I shifted gears in 2020. And by the way, when I quit in 2020, I thought I was doing a 30-day Toni timeout. I love alliteration. So I was like, well, let's make this fun. And I looked for a different methodology because they were starting to pop up back then. And I read this book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And it started to shift things for me. And I'm like, oh, like something little like this, the language. I could be alcohol free, not an alcoholic. And just that little shift changed a lot of things. And so, I mean, that was the start. And so 30 days became 45. I kept extending it. And then I just celebrated 5 years on October 12th. So it was, and I don't want to oversimplify this, because it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And the other reason why it was hard is I decided to do it out loud. So you're going to see a common theme through my story is that I'm a justice seeker, and I want to advocate, and I want to reduce stigma, and I want to reduce shame. And so the only way I know how to do that is to be vulnerable and tell my story to help other people say, I'm not alone. And if she can do it, I'm going to do it.
Such a beautiful story. I come from a family that on both sides, there's a long history of addiction to alcohol. And while that has never been my addiction of choice, food has definitely been what I turn to for comfort and as a coping strategy that is probably not the healthiest for me many times. So I can identify and relate to that concept. And I love what you talked about as far as just a simple rephrase and how that felt so very different. And I'm only going to do this for 30 days, and gave yourself permission to revisit it in 30 days and not this like all or nothing white knuckle approach, because I have certainly tried that with sugar.
Yeah.
And I think for so many of us, and I will speak for the highly sensitive woman, we're already feeling so much of the time that we are broken. And so when we have a behavior that we're trying to change, that idea of it being black and white and good or bad just adds an extra layer to trying to shift that behavior and make a change.
Absolutely. And if I may, I want to offer 2 resources for the food side of this, because I often see with my clients, there is overlap between alcohol and food, and a transference. And I'm careful to use the language because everyone can label themselves whatever they want, but because alcohol is caloric and food is caloric, I usually see a lot of crossover between the two and unhealthy patterns and coping. 2 books that I recommend and 1 podcast, and you may have heard of all these, but Make Peace with Food is the podcast that I was turned on to by another author friend of mine. Brain Over Binge by Katherine Hanson's an excellent book. And that book helps too. You can binge on anything. So it doesn't just have to be food. You can binge on alcohol, you can binge on TV, so it's just swap out the word food for alcohol or whatever it is you're binging. And a book I just read, which is not new, but one of my other clients recommended to me. I read it in 2 days. Women, Food, and God by Janine Roth. Phenomenal. So anyways, I put those resources out there for individuals. If you haven't heard of it, all of them are worthwhile to read, listen to, take in.
Thank you so much. We will put some links in the show notes for those who are interested in tapping into those resources. And those resources, along with many others, have led to you living a very empowered lifestyle now. And so I would like to share with the listener what that empowered lifestyle looks like for you today.
So I'm all about intentionality, and there were things that come naturally to me, and then things where I'm like, okay, how do I continue to achieve my goals? And I'm going to back end to answer this question. One of the questions I get asked quite often is, how are you so confident? And I always get a little uncomfortable. Not that that's a bad question, but I'm like, God, I hope I don't sound like a giant a-hole all the time. But it's because, and the best way I could explain it is because I set goals, no matter if they're tiny or big, and I accomplish most of them. Not all. Trust me, you should have seen my garden a year and a half ago. It was a hot mess and it was a failure. And that's okay, but I tried, right? So setting goals, big to small, and accomplishing the majority of them helps me build confidence. So I say all that because what I do, and I'm about ready to start it again this year, or at the end of this year, going into 2026, is I have a 1-year vision worksheet. And it's on my website, toniwill.com. And in all these buckets, it's like 6 different categories. It's health and wellness, career, family, spiritual. I put 3 or 4 goals in each bucket at the beginning of the year. And then I break it down, and not that anyone can see this, but I have a battle board on my wall monthly. So how am I going to accomplish? So I'll give an example. I read my age every year. So I'm 47 years old this year. So my goal is to read 47 books. So if I were to stand and just look at that goal in totality, I'd be like, oh my God, that's almost a book a week. And I work more than full time. And I have 3 kids. Well, they're adults, a husband, cats, dogs, whatever. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? Yeah, we don't get overwhelmed. We break it down on the battle board. It's written out here. That's just one of the goals. And then I have a daily habit app that I use each night for some of the goals. So annual, monthly, daily. And over time, you get to see how you're chipping away at that. The book goal is one of them. It could be workouts. That's important to me. What else? Meditation. That's another one. Gratitude journaling. And it can be things I don't want to do anymore either. So I'll give you an example real quick because it's powerful. When I quit drinking, I gave myself back about 800 hours a year. Now, that's thinking about drinking, actively drinking, or recovering from drinking. So people will say to me, Toni, how do you do all the work you do? Well, I gave myself 800 hours back a year, approximately. Okay. TV is something that I'm like, I don't love. I'm not like, I don't hate TV, but it's like, is this really a great use of my time? So I set a goal to have 30 days TV free. This year, I'm at 16 right now. I already know I'm not going to hit it. My husband kindly reminded me there are enough days left in the year, but I'm like, eh. So I had another goal where I would have 60 days of an hour or less TV. That one I've completely had no issue doing. So I'm okay with that. But it can be an example of stopping something too. It just doesn't have to be doing. Maybe I want to reduce something in my life as well. So a long answer to explain the how. And that's really important to me. And then my book is shaped around not just talking about, oh, this is some of the stuff Toni's done, but how do I do it? And I want to teach people the how.
Oh, I love so much that you talked about adding things and taking things away, because I feel like so often when we decide that we want to make a change, it's all this stuff that we're going to add, and then we get very overwhelmed and a lot of times don't follow through with any of it because it's just too much all at once. So the idea of I can set a goal that could be to add something, or I could also set a goal that is to remove something. I think that is kind of a game changer for a lot of people, because so many of us, we do get overwhelmed, or we feel like because we can't check off all of these things that we see other people doing, that we're not enough. So in this vein of trying to set some goals and to make some changes for the beginner who is just trying to shift into living an empowered life and to kind of stop living a life that other people have maybe chosen for them, what's one shift that the listener could make to start kind of reclaiming her power?
Yeah, this is a great question. I don't know if it's conventional or not, but this is what I'm seeing with women more and more, and I want to help them in this space. It starts with awareness, and a lot of people hate that because they're like, oh, awareness. But I need you, ladies, listen to me, okay? All ears. We talk to ourselves so mean. You would never talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself. So I would say start with, get your app out, your notes app on your phone, because you know we all have one, and start writing out the things you say to yourself and start there. And I know it's going to be hard, but I want you to understand the talk tracks that are in your mind, because that is what's blocking the first thing that's blocking you. Once we're aware of that, and you'd be like, oh my God. And then I want you to take it from, now, unless you didn't ask as well, I'll go to the next step. And then I want you to say it out loud to someone, like a trusted friend, a partner. Maybe you already have a coach or a therapist. And by the way, you can have both. You don't need one or the other. And say it out loud, because you need to get outside of yourself and be like, I want to change this. Then we can start with a 1-year vision worksheet. And then we can start to set goals. And they don't have to be goals like mine. They could be your goals, like literally maybe. And it doesn't have to be big. It does not have to be big. So it's what's in your world, what's important to you.
Love it. Love it so much. For so many years, I had no idea really all of those negative thoughts that were just constantly running in the background, and becoming aware of them and recognizing that I had the control to change those thoughts. And I start all of my coaching sessions with a client celebration, because now we're like shifting away from the negative and where can we find the positive? And it can be the tiniest little thing, but we're going to start rewiring and replacing those very negative, harsh, cruel things that we say to ourselves with a celebration for whatever goal, even if it was an awareness in that moment. That is a shift.
100%.
Love it. Well, Toni, this has been such a wonderful conversation that I know so many listeners are going to really resonate with. But if they wanted to know more about you and the work that you are doing, where can they find you?
ToniWill.com. All things are over there. All the things I mentioned. And my TEDx is also on there as well, where you can watch. That was a little over a year ago, but check that out. And then I'm on all the socials, even TikTok now. But I have help with that. But if you just put my name, Toni Will, and you'll find me. And it just 8 letters and Toni with an I like to point out. So that's it. Yeah.
Oh man, can I relate to you've got to spell your name for people. As you can imagine, mine gets misspelled and mispronounced all the time.
Yep, I get it. Yes, I can only imagine. So I feel you, sister.
Well, thank you so much. We will link all of the things that you have mentioned in the show notes, and it has just been a real pleasure. So thank you for taking the time.
Same, and I can't wait till you're on Women In. It's going to be great.
It is. Oh, we will be doing that in the new year, and I'm just already looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you there.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who may be feeling like she's broken too? I'd love it if you'd leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It brings me so much joy to know this podcast is helping you. Now it's time for me to stop talking and go soothe my senses in nature. I'll meet you back here next week for another episode. Take care.